We're joined now by Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews. Talk a little college football ahead of his magazine coming out next week, both online and you're doing print edition now too, right, Brett?
Yes, yep. Hard copy and the digital options are both available. We're about 2 weeks from the release date, so some of the predictions aren't final, guys. But excited to break it down with you. The process is underway here.
I'm curious because I just know how hard you like to work at this thing, and especially getting a chance to meet you a couple years ago. I, your accuracy is extremely important to you. Does the freedom of movement and the portal and the last minute things accentuate your strengths because of how you like accuracy, or does it drive you crazy because you know it could take you a little longer these days?
Yeah, Damon, it's definitely both. It's like there's more information out there, so I need to go grab it. You know what I mean? I'm really competitive with it. I always say if they're keeping score, I want to win the thing. So if they're going to grade who's the most accurate with predictions, that's the goal. So with that, I look at every single piece of data I can find. I look at every position group, room by room, who's in, who's out, why'd they leave, why did they come, what were they graded in high school, what were they graded as transfers, how'd they play last year. And now you have a lot of guys moving up from the FCS and the non-AQ up to the Power 5. How does that translate? Just so many variables. So, I launched this thing in 2012, and compared to back then, back then you had the BCS, you had the Big East still existed. It was a lot simpler times. So now it's just crazy. The work that goes in has increased 10 times, but probably makes it more valuable to the reader because they're probably lost coming out of summer. Like, what does my roster look like? What do the opponents' rosters look like? So hopefully my book is a nice guide there.
I guarantee you may be the only guy that could have Retzloff with the right team, given the fact that I look at BYU. BYU. I was legitimately calling them a dark horse, and over the weekend, obviously with this thing hanging over their head, he just announces that he's getting ready to leave with that student code of conduct, and it's like somebody's quarterback room is going to change dramatically in the next week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On that page, I had a little paragraph there saying if that legal situation goes the other way, here's who's in BYU's room, and they have Bear Bachmeyer. He came in, he's a 4-star, but you're talking about a true freshman. Otherwise, you have two max starters coming up, I think, from the non-AQ level. So their quarterback room completely shifted. But you're right. You have a guy here. He's a Big 12 starter, and he could start for a lot of programs out there. So somebody's going to get a heck of a summer prize here once he arrives on campus for fall camp. A little late in the game, but it's going to change somewhere. But definitely, we know it changed BYU.
Brett, as you kind of look, and we've sort of been playing this guessing game in the last hour, but as you sort of look at the landscape, obviously you've got as good of a grasp on these rosters as anybody does. Where are some logical landing spots in your mind? I'm not saying like rumors are reported, but like places you look at and you go, hey, like a Retzloff could make a real difference for this team.
Yeah, so you look at places that had quarterback changes. Right away the Tennessee UCLA spot. That trade, obviously UCLA got Nico, Tennessee landed Joey Aguilar, former App State starter. He doesn't have Power 5 experience, so maybe somewhere like Tennessee. Very, very specific offense they run with Josh Heupel. You look across the landscape. Like a Wake Forest, there teams like that might have spots at quarterback, but a lot of these playoff contenders are pretty settled at their quarterback. The spots that they were looking to add firepower were maybe receiver or another rush end, and you can never have enough offensive and defensive linemen. So, but I think the quarterbacks are pretty much set at the contenders. But, there's probably somewhere out there. And I don't really know the non-AQ landscape. I think that's probably most likely for him at this point, given it's July tomorrow. And that might be a little bit tough to go contend for a starting spot that quickly at a Power 5. So, we'll see what happens there. That was the big breaking news. I only know from the BYU perspective right now. I don't know what his plans are going to be or if he'll be eligible elsewhere even.
Let me ask you a question at the quarterback spot here, B, just because, and keep in mind, not the better quarterback, but the AQ or FCS to FBS conversation has me curious. So relative to their team, not who necessarily you think is the better quarterback, who do you think is more integral? Gronowski going to Iowa or Lagway year 1.5 in Gainesville?
Yeah, I would go Lagway. And maybe that's a little bit unfair because I've seen him in the SEC. We have a good sample size on him. He's played 8 games in the SEC. I think he's 7-1 or maybe like 6-1 in games he started and finished. He got knocked out of that Georgia game. They were up 10-0. But with Lagway, what I liked, he came in as a true freshman. He probably has one of the best deep balls already in the country. I mean, his hit rate on deep balls was awesome. Fix up some of those intermediate and short passing as a second-year starter. He has the build. I mean, people making the Cam Newton comparison because of his build and skill set. So I really like what they have there at Florida, especially with the roster around him. I think you have a really well-developed program. It's funny how quickly it changes at Florida. They were about to fire the guy in October.
Yeah.
Now they have a lot of positive trajectory. But then with Iowa, with Gronowski, I mean, talk about a winner. 2 national titles. The comp that I got from Scott Docterman, he's a great Iowa writer.
Oh yeah, we talked to Doc a lot.
Yeah, no, he's great at what he does, and the name he said was Trace McSorley, kind of a maybe similar skill set and size to him. Really a gamer. So I like hearing that. That's a Big Ten champion right there, and being from Pennsylvania, everyone loves Trace McSorley out here. So if you get anything like that at Iowa, that was the offense that's been broken, and they started to fix the run game last year. Now they want to fix the pass game. That'd be huge. So I don't know. I kind of rambled a little bit there. I've seen more of Lagway, and I think he's got a better team around him in Florida. So I'd go there.
Brett, we have been talking about a lot this offseason, Damon and I have, about sort of the middle of the Big Ten. So after Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, how the rest of that shakes out. And our argument's kind of been like the difference between 4 and I think 9 basically could be really, really razor thin. As you're kind of breaking the Big Ten into tiers,
Illinois,
like that,
Indiana, Nebraska, USC, Michigan, Minnesota,
UCLA, if you want to throw them in there.
Like, Iowa.
Do you say Indiana?
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of teams that could slot anywhere from 4 to 9 or 10. Like, what are some of the difference makers amongst that middle class of the Big Ten for you?
Yeah, well, another team that we should throw in there is probably Washington. This team going through a second-year coach bonus. I always like to see that, a second year for a staff or a coordinator or a really veteran team. They bring a lot back up there. There's other factors, too. I mean, I look at all my stats the previous year, my game grader formula, looking more than just the win-loss record. How close were they? I know that might ring hollow to fans because you want to win the games, obviously, but for a forward-looking approach, looking to next year, that starts to translate a little bit. So Washington stands out to me. I like their quarterback, Williams.
Really good.
They committed to him. He's fast. He really grew up in that bowl game. You saw those bowl practices paying off, and I can't imagine now a whole second off season. So I would look at them into that category that you were talking about. USC stood out to me in the research. 7-6 doesn't jump off the page, but I think it was 5 one-score losses. They were right there. They need to finish off games, and I think they're going to refocus on that and get the run game to finish off games this year. But yeah, really deep pool. And I'll say this, guys, and this is no spoilers because I haven't dug into it yet, but schedule is going to go such a long way in this middle tier of conferences because it's just so hit or miss. Yeah. It's crazy. It's like you're playing in 2 different leagues. So if you look at Indiana's schedule last year versus like a Washington schedule last year in the conference, it's crazy. So I need to break down. I do a whole schedule matrix. It's a big operation, one of the final days, and that might swing the needle a little bit, moving a team up from 7th to 5th or something, or 7th to 4th.
I actually think that facet that you do is probably your greatest separator, in my opinion, of people that do this and are good at it with their accuracy. Because what we try, and it's not because we do it, it's just very difficult to do, so it's why we do it. We always go through the schedule and the crossover games with swing games amongst these teams that we think are kind of sorting through, and we pick kind of the key games. I love how you do that because it gives you a good snapshot of not just trying to be right, but degree of difficulty to match what our projections, right? Well, I think this. Well, how hard would this actually be to pull off, right? It's very revealing.
I kind of go the other way, because I listen to podcasts and you see the way too early rankings come out in January, and I know that's for entertainment, but I don't do anything like that. I need to really just learn about every single team. I break it down, offense, defense, every position. I need to know what I'm talking about. So it takes all the way. I'm not even there yet. It takes till early July to really have gone through all 68 teams, know what they all have in their rooms, and then be able to say this team is stronger than this one. Let me look at who's playing who, and then the final thing is breaking down who's going to do against their schedule. Because you hear like it'll be February, and they'll say, "Oh, can BYU go 10-2?" Well, okay, who they playing? I mean, how are those 10, 12 teams? It just takes so much to go into it. So almost there. The finish line is dangling in front of me, about 10 days away. The fun part is coming with the predictions. But yeah, I always start with the research, end with the schedule. I think a lot of people just right away look at next year's schedule and try and just ram in a record into that.
So I know you said you haven't got here yet. I'm really curious when you get to Wisconsin's schedule, how you'll feel about that, because we went through it, and on the surface, that appears like a doozy in a really important year for Luke Fickell.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a swing year there. I mean, same with Matt Rhule. It's their third year for their staff up there. He already pulled the coordinator switch. That's one of the levers you have after a couple unsuccessful years, and I think it was their first losing year in 20-plus seasons. But I pulled up their schedule here real quick for you. I mean, a road game to Alabama in September doesn't help. That's going to be
not a good start.
You're going to limp out of mid-September there into the conference slate. But yeah, they play a lot of that middle tier and upper tier. You see Ohio State and Oregon right away, two real playoff blue bloods. Then you got a road trip to Michigan.
They got Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, and Oregon in a row.
Yeah.
And then you catch a breather getting Washington back home. It's like, really?
Yeah, and we talked like some of these swing teams that I'm probably higher on. Like I like Washington as a top 25 caliber.
I do too.
So
I don't
see many winnable games on here, to be honest with you. So that's one to keep an eye on.
So let me ask you about: would you rather try to pick between the Illinois, the Indianas, depending on how you feel about Mendoza? And we know Altmaier, they got 17, 18 starters back. You've got, Nebraska, who people are high on. You like Iowa, they're consistent. SC. Would you rather pick the middle of the Big Ten or pick a top 3 in the Big 12?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that is just the Wild West, that conference, and I love it. I can't wait to watch it in the fall. I think I'd try and go for that middle pack of the Big Ten. I think I can start to separate. I can make the case for each one. You hit on a little bit there. I mean, with Iowa, it's predictable. You're going to have a Phil Parker defense keeping you in most every game. It's just a matter of can their all FCS quarterback boost the offense. We talked Washington. Indiana was just a statistical giant last year. I know the schedule was easy, but for who they played, they killed.
Yeah, they hammered them. They did what they were supposed to.
Yeah. So when I heard people talk about that, about their schedule, that is true. But not everyone goes out and wins every game by 35. They were dominant. Illinois, I'm a little bit negative on this year. I'm not going to make many friends in Champaign this year. I know that this is supposed to be their dream season, but statistically, when you look at them last year, they don't have the type of profile that would project into an 11-win team the next year. So I think it was a great season last year, but I don't know if that has staying power. So, that's big. I'll say this real quick about the Big 12. I try and talk with head coaches and coordinators. One of them I'll keep anonymous, but I asked him, hey, who would you think contenders at the top of this conference? And he laughed. He's like, there isn't really a top. There's about 10 teams that could win the thing. So it's just crazy out there.
Are you surprised that with what Arizona State brings back, that more people aren't all in on the Sun Devils? I think it's pretty telling that they aren't.
Absolutely. And it's almost the same profile as Clemson within their conference because they both have the top returning production, the most top returning starters. They're very veteran teams. Basically, you're getting the team from last year back, and both of them won their conference titles. I guess it's just that Clemson has such that name recognition in the former dynasty with Dabo that they just have that trust factor, and maybe Arizona State hasn't had that amongst pollsters yet.
I think it's the 4 first or second rounders, probably 5 for Clemson.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. They deserve a little bit more hype than they're getting. I mean, everyone's back. Sam Leavitt is looking like an NFL first rounder, like you said, and the receiver Jordan Tyson, the pass rush. Lots to like there. But yeah, it's such a wide open conference. You look back on their schedule last year, maybe some of those flip, and you have a Baylor or a TCU that could have won the conference. Texas Tech imported the best roster in that conference history overnight. It's crazy the amount of money that was poured in and the amount of all conference guys that they've stashed in Lubbock. Yeah, I mean, you can make the
They're,
case for both teams.
that's my new dark horse. I don't know if that
Yeah,
D line can gel, right? I mean, they paid for high or higher paid to play, but so's a lot of people. But man, I that offense is pretty good too. They bring back a stud at quarterback. Texas Tech has got to be on everybody's radar as a dark horse.
yeah, I think so. It's a program that, at least in my lifetime, aside from the one Mike Leach team, they were never really a national contender, a national title contender. So it's just new territory here, and I think fans are going to see all the investment that's been poured in, not just the roster, but they had a $300 million stadium boost a couple years ago. It's like a whole new program than, say, 10, 20 years ago. So it's going to be exciting. I'm going to try and get down to a game in Lubbock. I really want to see it live. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of shot that they have, or at least the start of one of those runs. So yeah, it's uncharted territory there for Texas Tech. But they definitely brought in the talent. I think 12 four-star transfers. The rest of the conference has 12. So it's like they have really stockpiled a lot of talent.
Brett, what do you do with a couple Big 12 teams that underperformed last year in Utah and Oklahoma State, both with longtime coaches that have had a high level of success? Like those two teams, you mentioned 10 teams that could maybe win the Big 12, probably not included in that group of 10 are Utah and Oklahoma State. What are your numbers and some of your returning roster data talking about and two teams that have been really successful for a long time that had a tough year last year?
Yeah, definitely. And I think they're two different cases. And, I cover Utah a little more closely because I do some writing for KSL each week. I do previews for Utah and BYU. So I'm pretty close with what's happening there. It was a little bit of a fluke last year. I know Utah fans will tell you that. But really, I mean, their fifth-year quarterback, Cam Rising, went down in the first game or second game. He was thrown into the Gatorade coolers and jammed his hand. He was out for the year. And that really set back the offense. I mean, it was a dead offense. The defense still turned out a top 15, top 20 unit, and that's going to continue under Morgan Scalley. He's got such a track record.
Yes,
but why
he
I think
does.
Utah is a better contender this year than Oklahoma State, I think Utah really addressed their problem. They went out, they hired a whole new offensive staff. It was the top rushing attack in the country last year. They brought their quarterback with them, too, with Dampier. So I think they're going to try and address the problems. Oklahoma State, I don't know what the vision is. They had some poor coordinator hires recently. They're not recruiting anywhere near where they should be. I think they're outside the top 40 most years now. So I don't know they have the talent base there anyway. So I would go Utah as in that 10-team contender pool, and I don't see the Oklahoma State anywhere near it.
So we're looking for – I had a poll question. I don't know. This is a couple months ago, and this is back when we were trying to slot AQs, which I hate. But, I was like, if I'm the ACC, what would I – quote unquote settle for? So I was trying to pick the big three, and I said, any given year, why can't Clemson, Miami, and Florida State all be good? And historically, over the last 25 years, I see why. Like it rarely happens for whatever the reason. It just hasn't come to fruition. So let me ask you about another team that could slide into that spot. If you had to play the long game over the next 3 or 4 years, would you push your chips towards Chapel Hill or down there in the DFW area with SMU?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, the UNC experiment is really, really it's eye-catching. I don't know what to expect with it. I don't know if this is going to be a 2-year thing or if it's the awakening of a sleeping giant. I mean, famously, Bobby Bowden called UNC the sleeping giant of the ACC because you see what they've done athletically with their basketball program. It's a great, great school itself. So, and they have the investment. So it's just a sleeping giant. I think it's going to be quite a process there. SMU, they have that commitment. They're going to bring the money. They're going to kind of like Texas Tech to a degree. They're going to pump their roster with the best players they can afford. They seem to have the want to build a program there too. I'll go SMU. I mean, look at what they did in just 1 year at the Power Four.
Yeah.
So I'll go with them long term. You know what else, guys? They have the location. That's the one thing you can't change about a program is their location, and they're located there in Texas with some of the best high school talent and quality and quantity there. It's just loaded with talent.
I'm waiting for Virginia Beach, that area down there towards DC. They waiting for not a resurgence, but a kind of a. I mean, 80s and 90s, that was the spot. That was the spot, man. I don't know if people are moving or not having as many kids, but that used to be a pretty talent-rich area. Let me ask you about trust, level of trust. Are you a Shula Sellers guy, or are you a Bobo Stockton guy when you're going to try to predict what's going to happen in the SEC?
Yeah, well, if you're talking quarterbacks, I think you'd want to take Sellers, and that's just, again, it's going off past performance, so that's a good indicator. But we had a full season with Sellers. I really like what he did, especially as a first-year starter. You're going to see even more of a boost this year.
High risk, high reward style.
Yeah, absolutely. It's boom or bust. With his legs, he gives you a little bit more playmaking ability. You can not only extend plays but make big ones. I mean, he had the game-winning scramble to beat Clemson, and again, all as a first-year starter. With Stockton, also a first-time starter last year. We only saw him twice, and it was against two of the best teams in the country. Hard to hold him accountable for that. You know what I mean? Hey, welcome to the SEC. Get in there and play the number one defense in the country. So, and he grinded out a win. So credit to him. I'll go with the South Carolina situation just because we've seen 13 games of it, and he was able to go 9-4. I'll go with Sellers.
So one of the programs I'm fascinated with here is Notre Dame. Obviously, they had that huge breakthrough last year. What do you think about the staying power of the Fighting Irish and the way that Marcus Freeman has that thing going?
Yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere this time, guys.
How about his recruiting?
I know. You read my mind. I'm going right there because under Brian Kelly, it was always consistent, but they would oscillate. They would go some 8-4, 9-3, then they'd have their 12-0, and then they'd fall back a few years. But I don't see this being a yo-yo type thing. I think that the underlying talent he's brought in, it's really elevated the recruiting profile. A lot of 4-star, 5-stars at every position now. There's no real transition. So now they're just an NFL factory. They might send a bunch of guys to the pros, but they're just reloading now. And I think players want to go play for him. He seems really inspirational, seems motivational. And then in game, he's the secret sauce. I mean, against Georgia, he had some of those little coaching tweaks and the hard counts and the special team stuff. All that adds up, and that wins games, and that's going to continue. So I don't think they're going anywhere, especially now with the 12-team playoff. They have a couple mulligans built in, so you're going to see them in the bracket most years, and that only helps more for recruiting being in that bracket most years. So I think Notre Dame's here to stay, and I think Freeman's one of the best coaches in the game.
Yeah, a little bit of it's not necessarily a transition for Kirk Campbell, but obviously getting the promotion in Ann Arbor, he inherits an interesting quarterback room, right? We get Underwood and the late flip commit, and reports are kind of shaky. They bring in Garcia out of the portal in June, which was a little ominous, at least on paper. Do you like the trajectory of what's happening with those guys on offense in Ann Arbor, or is that part of the reasons you have questions about their resting place in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's definitely a question, to be honest with you. And, it starts at quarterback. They really struggled there last year and really broke the offense. They had to go super run heavy, which that could still work at a place like Michigan. But the timing of it last year, after their title team, they sent 6 linemen to the pros. And, you only start 5. So that shows you how deep that offensive line was, sending 6 guys to the pros. So they had a huge rebuild happening. It was the coach change after Harbaugh. It was quarterback change after McCarthy. The defense at least kept them afloat, and I think that'll continue. They've recruited so well there, and they coach them up on defense. But I don't see any kind of breakthrough, and it would have only been in the form of Underwood. But I have never seen such negativity out of a 5-star.
So it's not just us, because sometimes I feel like I'm reading what I want to. I haven't heard anything good.
No, you're right, and you usually hear the local writers and local people really overly optimistic about the 5-star. They're like, oh my gosh, he's the answer to our problems. Look at him, he's got the big arm. But then at Michigan, it just didn't have that same feel. They're a little worried, and you see pictures out of there, some practice clips. I don't know, unless it's all some deception thing they're trying to do. But then the writing's on the wall by bringing Garcia in, and that's kind of an insurance policy to me. That sounds to me like, all right, we'll start Underwood. If after September, if it's not clicking, at least we have an experienced Power 4 guy to put in there. That's what it looks like to me as an insurance type policy. So we'll see. But usually it's way, way more optimistic coming out of camp than that.
Brett, I'm curious, kind of a big picture question here as you get ready to send your magazine to print and get ready for public consumption here. I know how much pride you take in the accuracy of your playoff predictions. Last year with the 12 team for the first time, did you have to change at all the way you approached this? I know you talked about the schedule matrix being a big part of how you kind of put those predictions together? Like, how much different was it going from 4-team to 12 now that you've got a year of it under your belt?
Yeah. Well, the process, the research, the writing, all that still remained the same. It was just that final stage. With 4 teams, you had to really fine tooth comb it, right? You had to really laser in on, can this team go undefeated? And that's such a higher bar than can they go 9-3 in the SEC. So it was really, can this team go undefeated or maybe one loss and win their conference title game? That was the old formula. So you really had to be, way more focused. Now, last year, this time, I was trying to think, what's the committee going to do? Are they going to have 5 SEC teams? Is it going to be 3-3-2-2? Like, how's that bid breakdown going to go? Because I've got the teams ranked. It's just a matter of how many from each league is going to get in there. Another thing is the big non-conference games, because you might have a couple of, within the SEC 5-3 teams, but did they also go undefeated non-conference to get to 9-3? So much more. Yeah, you're right. I mean, with the 4-teamer, I had to be more particular, and here are the 4 teams with the best case. Now it's a wider scope, and you're looking at different things like who can edge through their 9-3 and be in the discussion, or who'd be 10-2 with a couple big resume wins. So it's a different ball game now, and for better or for worse.
I want to go back to the Big Ten here for a little bit. I want to see. Look, I want to talk through Parson through the middle part of this, and they're probably closer to the top, but they have questions too. Whether it's the in-game stuff from Oregon, I'm not sure how you feel about, Willie Stein or Lapoy for that matter. If it's not his recruiting prowess defensively, whomever takes snaps there at the quarterback spot, are they, for you, is Oregon talented enough to be firmly slotted in that top 3 of Ohio State, Penn State, and then I'm assuming Oregon? Do you like Stein and like the prowess, or is it plug and? Are they good enough to be plug and play at quarterback?
Well, this is a big test this year because the first 2 quarterbacks that they had there were some of the most experienced in college football history.
You got 2 record holders and career starts back-to-back years.
They broke each other's record. Yeah, it was Bo Nixon his 6th year and Gabriel his 6th year, and they were great. They operated that offense perfectly. It's a lot of short passing. You just get the ball to the athletes and then let them create on the outside. The one thing you can't deny is their offensive line building. They've been great at that. That started under Cristobal and has now continued. They had another Joe Moore Award finalist last year, but a lot of starters gone. So the deal with Oregon this year is, I think it's 18 starters gone off of that undefeated team, but the way they've recruited is unbelievable. It's new standards for Oregon. So it's how quickly can these young guys compete and round into a playoff contender. In the old system, in the 4-teamer, I would not pick them for the playoff. I think they're going to trip up a couple times with such a young team. But this is a whole new ball game. If they go 10-2 or 9-3 even with a tough schedule, they're going to be rounding into form in January. This young team is going to have 12 games under their belt, all the bowl practices, and they could round into a playoff and championship contender in January. So I do think they have a good shot at winning it all or being in that playoff in the 12-teamer. And, it's just all-time recruiting standards now, top 5 every year. And I know that recruiting rankings can be wrong, but they're more right than wrong. And over such a sample size of like 4 straight classes like this, I think they're loaded everywhere.
God, good pull on O-line coach, because I think that's Alik Terry.
Mm-hmm.
And this might only be his 3rd year, I think, as their O-line coach, which is incredible for the headway that he's made. But all right, so let me give you another one. We talked about, Stein and whomever plays quarterback there. We've touched on, Campbell and whomever's going to play quarterback in Ann Arbor. Do you lean the more known commodity of Maeva and Lincoln Riley in SC to have a resurgence?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I threw them into that conversation earlier about that middle tier and can they contend. I think they're definitely a contender. If there's any guy that has a track record on offense, it's Lincoln Riley. I mean, it's unbelievable what he built over the years in Oklahoma, Heisman winner at USC already. That's never been the problem. It's been their defense. And I think he made a great hire last cycle with Anson Lynn coming across town from UCLA.
Yeah.
So I think that with the 2nd-year coordinator bonus there, you're going to be boosted there. They also packed their defensive line with a couple big nose tackles. Keyshawn Silver, 330-pounder, and Jamal Jarrett, a 350-pounder from Oregon. So put some beef in the middle of that line, against these Big Ten offenses, start to build towards a Big Ten defense. And again, like I said, 7-6 last year, a lot of them were 1-score games, and a lot of them they held leads late in the game, couldn't finish it off. The run game wasn't as strong, and maybe some of that clock management at the end of the game. He's not used to being in such battles, but I think that starts to reverse here this year. I think they're going to be better than they looked last year. And yeah, you know what? He handpicked Maeva He made the quarterback switch halfway through the year. That was on purpose. This guy knows what he's doing. You have to trust a coach like that with such a track record. So, and then talk about recruiting. It's 5 stars and 4 stars everywhere at USC. I like them as a top 25 team, probably higher than that, and in that contention for a 4th or 5th spot in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I actually think there's good days ahead for Miller Moss too. So if Lincoln Riley's right, man, good on him, because he got rid of a guy that I think is going to be functional in his next stop with his OC. If they do that, he definitely reiterates that he knows what he's doing. Let me kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Do you like the emergence of Cignetti and what Mendoza brings to the table, or the track record and upside of Holgorsen and Raiola?
Oh, that's a tough one being on Nebraska radio right now.
Oh, but that's why you're one of the best. As we're talking with Brett Ciancia from Pick Six.
It's 2 different scenarios to me, to be honest with you. Because Mendoza, we saw him all last year. We didn't have the talent around him at Cal, but he kept them competitive. They had like a 35-10 lead on Miami. He was throwing the ball all over the yard before that big Miami comeback. But I think with Mendoza, they're getting one of the best quarterbacks in the country. It's a little bit more proven to me. But here's the thing with Raiola, he's got a 5-star billing, and you always see that biggest improvement from the first to second year starting. People forget he's a true freshman last year.
And with over 500 snaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I think you're going to see a great boost here from Raiola in a second year. I love the coordinator switch. I don't think that the old one was going to really work based off his track record at South Carolina before that. So I really like the Holgorsen move. He's done it everywhere. He's kind of a brilliant offensive mind. So, you know what? I'll go with a bigger improvement there at Nebraska. I had a chance to go down there. I was down there for the Colorado game last year. The stadium was rocking. I mean, that was one of the loudest stadiums I've ever heard when Tommy Hill had that pick 6. I was right down that end zone, man. I mean, that was awesome, peak college football. So, I got to see Nebraska at their best last year. I want to see more of that this year. And I think you'll get that. I mean, they always talk about Rhule's 3rd year. Here we are. It's year 3. They're older. They're bigger. So I think it's time.
So I want to stick in the Big Ten here for a second because, ironically enough, and this leads into my question, we haven't really talked about Penn State yet. And they might be the most, by the way, returning quarterback who everybody thinks is pretty good. You got Kotelnicki at OC. You've got a playoff team from last year. You got a bunch of returning starters, and we're just kind of like, oh, yeah, Penn State's there too.
Yeah, no, it's true. But I think you're in a different environment to me. I'm based in Pennsylvania. So I'm hearing this every single day about Penn State. The Penn Staters, this is all in for Penn State this year, 2025. Okay. I mean, this is I've been hearing about this recruiting class for 5 years. This 2022 class, it's a lot of in-staters.
We reread it off last year when we were trying to validate James Franklin. We're like, why in the world are people every year he has to prove himself? The guy's been really good. Like, he has.
No, it's true.
He has. And they've only had two really good recruiting, where we would call high-end recruiting classes. Otherwise, he's kind of been, low teens. But the 2022 class was supposed to be sensational.
Exactly, and that's all back. It's Drew Aller, quarterback. It's the running back duo of Allen and Singleton. These are guys that could have gone pro and been high draft picks, and one by one they all came back. They do lose Abdul Carter, the big defensive end that went 3rd overall. But it reminds me a little bit of the Michigan in 23 and Ohio State in 24, where a lot of guys could have gone pro and they all ran it back for one last year. Love their coordinators. So talking about Franklin, his coordinator Rolodex is incredible. One guy leaves, he brings in Jim Knowles. He hires Tom Allen. Tom Allen goes to Clemson. He pulls the other best coordinator in the country, Jim Knowles. He's got one of the best offensive minds in the country, Kotelnicki. So I really like what they have up there. This is kind of the year to do it. But, yeah, we talk about the pros and cons. The con that everyone brings up here in Pennsylvania is Ohio State. They have a real Ohio State problem. They always play them close into the 4th quarter, and then they collapse late in the game. It's like an annual sequel you have to watch every year. It's the Penn State collapse against Ohio State. So fans are really focused on that. But the Final Four run last year got them some juice and really raised the expectations for this year. It really feels like an all-in type season and situation for Penn State.
Let me give you one more since we're in the Big Ten, because for some reason, and I think it's the 5 losses in a row, I just think they're better than we're giving them credit for. They're recruiting well, and I think it's must win for Nebraska if they want to make some headway. They've got to beat both Minnesota and Iowa, which they haven't done in the same year in forever. What do you think about the Gophers?
Yeah, well, this is a program you know what you're getting. It's PJ Fleck. It's a grinded out team. They're not going to beat themselves. What we saw last year was a little bit different, actually. Usually a run heavy, one of the most run heavy percentage teams in the country. They aired it out a little bit last year, so that was a different touch. But they do have a lot of talent back. This is like a consistently 7 or 8 win caliber team, so they're a tough out. I don't see them contending, obviously, for a title outright. Probably one in that big middle tier we talk about. But you got to like what Fleck has done. He's going with a young coordinator on defense. That might be a little bit of an unknown, but they're not going to fall off. They're not going to be like a 4-8 team all of a sudden. They're going to be a tough out every Saturday.
That's our guy, Brett Ciancia, Pick Six Previews. Make sure you go check out pick6previews.com. Make sure you get that preview magazine or online digital copy ordered as well. Brett, we appreciate the time as always. Let's catch up again soon.
Be as good as it gets, buddy. You know I mean that.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for the praise. Let's talk again in July once it's published.
You got it.